This is the hard truth.
Today's episode is called The Slave Race. Often people say to me, why would the governments of the world not have our best interests at heart? Why would they care so little about us? Why would they create wars and famines and orchestrated depressions? And that is a difficult one, really, to understand. Because if they're part of the human species, there must be some empathy, there must be some care. We would assume that would be the case. And yet we seem to see evidence of some evil, psychopathic people that have no care at all, who have a long-standing agenda to almost limit the human race in terms of development. And yet there are people out there who obviously do have our interests at heart. So there seems to be two factions. One for the good of mankind and one that doesn't care. And we know the one that doesn't care is these globalist billionaires, psychopaths, paedophiles. They've got no regard for humanity at all. And the same characters are grown and put into different parties, but they all belong to the same agenda. Now, I have a theory. I believe this has been happening for thousands of years. And the only thing that makes sense is if the evil people within our society were a different breed or a different species or a different race, then they'd have no empathy. They'd have no care for the worker ants. So, is there any evidence of this? Well, there was a FOXP2 gene that was discovered by geneticists. And this gene was suddenly popped up out of nowhere a couple of 100,000 years ago. And this is the gene that apparently gave us communication skills. But there's no origin. It's unique to us. No other species has this. And there's no origin of or development pattern for this gene. It just popped up as if it was downloaded into us. Now, every ancient record, going from the Greeks to the Egyptians to the Sumerians, all speak of gods, inverted commas. Powerful beings that came from the stars. The Chinese called them star children. The Navajo Indians spoke of them. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki. The Mayans had their own myths. Everybody around the world, every ancient civilization essentially said the same thing. Advanced beings, gods, call them what you like, because indeed they were gods to the primitive people, came to Earth and used humans or early men for mining of materials. Now, they found gold mines emptied of gold, and yet there's been no activity in that mine for 250,000 years. And something like 70% of the Earth's gold is gone. It's not there. It's never been there. There are, again, statues in the Olmec civilization of Negroid-featured people with mining hats on and things like this. And the archaeologists can't explain it. Nobody can explain it. There's certainly evidence of previous civilizations and land tracts that disappeared and et cetera, et cetera. So civilization goes back many hundreds of thousands of years, I believe. And again, all the records say the same thing. One faction of the gods was for mankind, another faction was against them. And this is where all the myths of Adam and Eve and giving man intelligence and the veneration of the earth goddess and the earth mother, where all this stuff comes from. Primitive man venerated the upgrade of the human species. One faction of the gods had our best interests at heart, one didn't. And this is where all the tales, again inverted commas, of the wars of the gods come from. In the Mahabharata, in Sumerian myths, in Egyptian myths. Again, they all say the same thing. The evidence is overwhelming. So it's pretty clear somebody was pulling the strings. Somebody was in charge. Somebody used man as ancient labour. Now, did man rebel? Did we rebel? Is this why the flood was sent to wipe us out? Was it viewed as a failed experiment? Were we always a petri dish? Were we a basic mining experiment that developed? Let's see what we can create. Now, even now, our geneticists have the ability to alter genes and clone and all sorts of things. It's not beyond reason that a more advanced species out there couldn't do, the similar sort of thing, but at a higher level. So in my view, this is eminently possible and probable and would explain everything. Now, here's the thing. When you get the history of the Blue Bloods and the Royals and the bloodline must be pure and the secret societies to preserve the knowledge and the Masonic societies and the desperation to find certain relics and the Holy Grail and things like this. Why? Why? Why are certain things off limits? Why are there certain places you're not allowed to go into? Or certain places you're not allowed to visit? Nobody can go to Antarctica. Why? Why can't you go there for a holiday? Why are we prevented from flying over Antarctica? Why? Why are there all military outposts in Antarctica? So there's a lot kept from us. Why are there all these hidden underground bases and secret programs and, tales of alien intervention and cooperation between the governments of certain countries and alien visitors? Are they all wrong? Is everybody lying? So I think it's possible that there is another race who doesn't have the best interests of mankind at heart, who is pulling the strings, who is probably creating a world for themselves maybe. And maybe, we're like locusts. We're breeding too fast, there's too many of us. And what do they want to do? They want to cull the herd. So there's certain mechanisms in place that we shall live 70 years and 10. And yet earlier characters in the Bible, for example, lived hundreds, if not thousands of years. So certainly they know there's a certain point where genetically we start to age. And it's like a clock starts ticking, but it doesn't have to. There will be the ability soon to turn that off. So you don't have to age. It's almost like there's a kill switch built into us because they don't want us to live too long. They don't want us to get too clever. The Tower of Babel was I think a parable of such. Don't let them get too intelligent. Don't let them get too powerful. Keep them subservient. So everything in our food is designed to weaken our immune system. The antibiotics, feed us them for 50 years, whack out the immune system a bit more, then release viruses into the population. And who survives? Only the strongest. All the weak go. All the people with ailments or people that are going to have ailments, taken out. Saves a fortune. So when you start to think of mankind as a worker race, when you start to think of mankind as the workers for the gods, for the advanced species, then it all seems to make sense. Because of course they wouldn't care about us in the same fashion as we wouldn't care about ants. If we stepped on an ant, we're not going to lose any sleep over it. So is this an agenda that we find ourselves in that's just becoming a little bit too obvious for us? Did they make a mistake with the release of social media and the internet, and it got too powerful? And it enabled people to become even more knowledgeable. And was that by design? Were the good forces behind the scenes trying to enable us to become more knowledgeable so we knew what was going on? You look at a 9-year-old child of 50 years ago and, they couldn't tie their shoelaces up. Now they're whizzing around on iPads like, geniuses, and how they're using technology. And what is the plan for mankind? Well, we know the plan. The plan is to erase mankind and create a new hybrid, genderless, AI-implanted automaton. And the more robotic we become and are turned into, then the less it costs. No sick days, production goes up, more money's made for the few. And that very elite group, they won't be eating bugs. They'll have their own lands and their own food sources and the best cattle and everything. So this is what's planned for us. And in my view, our own people couldn't do that to us. There couldn't be 2% of the world's population that were geared to stripping this earth. It only makes sense if we're a slave race.